What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to another open date version of the Orange Crush podcast. David, open date number 2 in what feels like, a few weeks?
Yeah, and we don't have Bill Belichick to make fun of on this one.
I know, it's tough. We don't have any Bill to talk about for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and this is kind of weird. Like open dates are just weird in this profession, and then to kind of have them, two within a space of 4 weeks is kind of strange. I guess it's better than later in the year. The weather's turning really nice, and Clemson has a lot of questions that still need to be answered. Look, they're probably not going to be answered this year. The questions are going to be answered as we head into the off season. And right now, I've kind of been taking a deep look at Clemson's running game, the struggles that it has. And I just asked you a question. Who has the better running game in the ACC, Clemson or Louisville? And you were surprised to find out that Clemson is just smidge
Yeah,
better than Louisville, who ran all over Miami last week. Weird what numbers are, right?
numbers are strange. And when you look at sort of Clemson's rushing attack, especially last week, I would have figured that's their second straight, or not second straight, but their second game where Randall's had 30 yards. And so you'd figure that it'd start to plummet a tad when I see Isaac Brown on Friday night getting first down after first down for Louisville. So it's just numbers are weird.
Yeah, and Louisville had a kind of a great start. They rushed for 229 against Eastern Kentucky, but against JMU 113, 126 against Bowling Green. And then when they played some really good competition in Pitt and Virginia, it was 53 and 54 yards. And even though we say they ran all over Miami, it was 31 carries for 119 yards or 3.84 yards per carry, which is right on their season average. And so Clemson is right there with them. Neither team very good at running the football. Of course, Florida State leads the ACC in rushing, averaging 46 attempts a game, 254 yards a game. But they are on a 4-game losing streak, so it doesn't always equate to wins.
Yeah, I mean, did you also see that I've had this "it always could be worse" mantra that's been floating around where you mentioned Florida State is 0-4 in the ACC. Mike Shula protests are going down in Columbia. Did you see that? They mobilized. That is the American, that is American as it gets. That's as SEC as it gets. What happens there?
That was just a Shane Beamer, love him to death, for what he's been able to do down there at South Carolina. Like he's kind of, reinvigorated that program. He's beat Clemson 2 out of 3 years, but man, he makes some head scratching hires. And he's, got rid of his offensive line coach. He's brought in Sean Elliott, who is maybe most famous in Clemson for getting caught urinating in downtown Greenville and getting a ticket for it. You probably don't even remember that one. But then the offensive coordinator of that offense just is lackluster. There are 136 teams in college football in the upper level. They are 129th in total offense. It is not good down there. And of course, Clemson, you say it's really bad. It could be worse. The saving grace for South Carolina, their defense is pretty good.
It's kept them in games
It
for the
has.
most part of the season. It's fascinating that so many different players this year and entering open date 2 of the year. Which did you see? I think we had talked about this not on a podcast, but North Carolina had 2 open dates in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So 2 trips to Nantucket for Bill.
Well, yeah.
Might as
It's
well.
just weird how it is. And, money drives college football. That's the reason for the open dates. You've got teams starting the third week of August, whereas it used to kind of be around that Labor Day deal. And now, here you go. Everybody's got these early starts, and you're going a little bit later, so you got to build in these open dates. And I'm not sure if coaches like them or not. I guess Dabo Sweeney, it doesn't matter when the open date comes. To him, it always comes at a great time because you're able to heal up and get some guys ready to go. For Clemson, this really is kind of that way. I think that Cade Klubnik, now you're giving that ankle a couple extra weeks to rest. You're not going to get Bryant Westco back, but there are some other guys like a Tristan Lee that you kind of wonder, is he going to be able to get back and heal up those bumps and bruises?
Yeah, the bumps and bruises are certainly accumulated for Clemson. And yesterday we got to hear from Tom Allen for the first time in several weeks, and it felt pretty at a pretty pivotal time
Yeah,
given
yeah,
the performance on Saturday against
yeah.
SMU. And one of the things that you kind of nudged at me at the press room was to talk about Jaheim Lawson. And this is kind of the opening of this podcast where we're just kind of do a thought experiment of not only where's this season going, but what players should we see or would we want to see for the Tigers moving forward? At 3-4, an ACC championship, that's not happening. Playoff, the world would have to literally collapse into two, and then even still, they may not make the playoffs. But you want to kind of see some different people out there and see what players moving forward can contribute in 2026. And one of those has certainly got to be Jaheim Lawson, who is playing some really good football.
He is, and it says to me a lot. I thought T.J. Parker loafed on setting the edge on one of those big plays the other day. It just didn't seem like a very good look. And then Jaheim comes in, on the next drive and blows up a play. Kind of gets inside, blows it up. He celebrates. It's what we've seen out of him. He is explosive, and yeah, you're going to have to rely. Look, let's face it. Will Helt's probably going to go pro. T.J. Parker's probably going to go pro. You're going to have Jaheim Lawson and then who at defensive end next year. You're hoping you're going to get like an Ari Watford back, and then some guys like that. Darian Mayo's coming along. I think Clemson again is probably going to have to dip into the portal to get somebody. I'd love to see Jaheim a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball, and I'll say this too, man. Kobe McLeod playing really well. I think
Yeah.
every time he's out there, he's kind of doing something pretty good. I think he draws a lot of people's ire because a lot of people see him as that, friends and family deal with Coach Sweeney. I think I've even said that. Apologies to Kobe. I think he's playing well. Would love to see a little bit more out of him and Jeremiah Alexander at linebacker. But yeah, Jaheim's the one guy on defense I need more of. And then boy, do I have some opinions on that offense.
Boy, do you. I mean, don't we all? That is the comment section usually, at least on our TigerNet boards or everywhere. If it's the offense is brought up, it's just a light show. You can just flicker them off and on, and it's one of those stadium performances where everyone gets like the phone camera thing, and it's just a doop 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 doop. So it's fun. I love it. But yeah, to your point, Kobe McLeod is one where you felt like a little. Yeah, there it is. It's a light show, except it's angry comments about Garrett Riley and co. With the offense, and we'll get to that in a second. But Jaheim Lawson, one you're gonna have to rely on next year. Kobe McLeod, one that's been kind of teased as coming along, and he continues to make plays. Feel like, and I think I've correct me if I'm wrong. Tom Allen did say he was someone who should have been on the field more on Saturday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
So
So, we should have out there a lot more. And I was delving into some snap counts. Sammy Brown leads Clemson with 350. Uh, Wade Woodaz is right there at 349, along with Ronan Hannafin. So those guys have been out on the field a whole lot. Those are also your three leading tacklers, and I think that says a lot about how teams are having success getting to the perimeter, getting to that third level. That your safety is right there among your leading tacklers. That's not good.
yeah, I remember week one when Ronan Hannafin was your leading tackler, and I thought part of me was like, is that necessarily a good thing? Because
It's
that
not a
kind
good
of
thing.
kind of tells me that something's cracking up to the next level, and it sort of paved the way for what a defense that's been all over the place. And we talked about this before SMU, is that it's an offense, or really any time Clemson's defense has seen an offense that's moving around a lot, either pre-snap, post-snap. It makes those linebackers in the middle think, and they're playing their feet down, and they're like a step or two late. Don't often see that with Sammy Brown because he's got 4.3 speed, and if he's late, it doesn't matter. He's that much of an athlete that he can recover and make the right play. And usually, more than not, Sammy Brown is. But that defense has certainly had its struggles in year one with Tom Allen. And one of the things he said yesterday, it was really a great presser, to be
Great.
honest. A lot of honesty, a lot of just revealing things, and some of the things that he said about I want faster, hungrier players who love football. I don't know if that's we're digging into the weeds too much about this specific group, but sort of
No,
seems like he's put. I don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, what is he really saying? But it
yeah,
felt
I
like
think
he
he's
was saying
really
a lot
saying
without.
something there.
So, what was sort of your reaction to it all?
Yeah, one of the things that kind of stood out to me was, people love to look at Tom Allen and what's happened so far and say, well, it's not Brent Venables. He's not bringing pressure like Brent was bringing pressure. And that's true. The pressure's not there. And you would hope that you're going to get pressure with that defensive line. And those guys have not been good. In fact, they have just been beat up and been out physical at times. And Tom Allen talked about technique. But going back to the pressure part of it was where he said that, it is in reality, it's tough to play man defense. Like if you're going to bring pressure, you're going to have somebody in man on the back end, right? They can't play man defense because they keep getting beat. That is a lack of team speed and a lack of talent, probably. And he basically says, hey, I can't bring as much pressure as I want to because we're just not very good at playing man coverage. And, you saw it Saturday where they had a man switch deal with a tight end and a wide receiver, and two players cover the slow tight end, and they leave the fast wide receiver wide open. Those are issues. And yeah, if you're going to bring pressure and you're going to leave somebody open on the back end, that's when mistakes happen. And Sammy Brown leads his team in tackles for loss with 6.5. And you would kind of hope, a linebacker would be there, but you'd hope one of those big defensive linemen would be in those numbers too, and they're just not.
Before we get back to this video, we'd like to thank the title sponsor for this podcast, Newton Scott and Associates. This team is headlined by Jeff Scott, former Clemson assistant coach and two-time national champion, as well as Eric Newton, a longtime local and trusted real estate partner. These two are teaming up to provide a first-class experience for all Clemson fans. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or build in the upstate area of South Carolina, you can trust Newton Scott and Associates. Choose the same team that Clemson coaches are selecting when they're looking to buy, sell, or build, all the way from Tigertown to Lake Kiowee. For more information, you can find them at newtonscottsc.com or by calling the number 864-722-9062. That's 864-722-9062. Now, let's get back to the video. No, it's been a rough season for what we expected to be one of the more vaunted defensive lines in the country,
Yeah.
where Fran Brown had said earlier in the season, and it was maybe one of more out of respect than it was actually for the film, but he was like, man, these guys are effing nice. They're really good. And that was still early in the year where things were seemingly still on top, or things were fine. Even though it was 1-2, you could still theoretically turn it around. But no, this defensive line has been a major disappointment outside of a few players. Will
Yeah.
Helt has played really hard. Jaheim Lawson has been someone that I think fans are excited about. Physically continues to develop. He had told us, I think it was last week or a few weeks ago, just about where he was at physically and how much speed, muscle he's put on to really turn into the player that he is. Maybe there's another level for him to tap into now that he's going to get kind of that focus as one of their premier defensive linemen.
Well, Will Helt leads his team in tackles for loss. He's got 8.5. Sammy's got 6.5. TJ Parker's at 6. Okay. Jaheim is fourth, despite not getting a lot of playing time with 5. And then all of a sudden, you're kind of down in the weeds a little bit with Avion Terrell. Wade Wood has 2.5 each. Jamal Anderson, who hasn't played since the last 3 games, he's got 2. He's 7th. Stephon Green, DeMonte Capehart. You have to go all the way down to Peter Woods, who's got a half tackle for loss more than Champ Thompson.
Mm.
What does that kind of say a little bit? I mean, these are guys that, you're expecting to be disruptors, and they're just not. And maybe we see some of these kids. Stephon Green's actually been starting out there ahead of Capehart, and I think that that's interesting. He has played really well. I think there's been some mistakes, and Clemson's not bad. I think Clemson's like, looking the other day, like 32nd, 33rd nationally in tackles for loss. The sacks are not there. The sacks are just not there. So it's a defense that's doing some things good. It's creating some havoc. It's also just allowing a whole lot of big plays.
Well, I'm not the biggest advanced stats nerd out there, but I would love to see the pressure rate for Clemson because that's ultimately the biggest teller is, are you getting the quarterback to force a bad throw? Are you creating that havoc? As you'd use that word havoc, it's a great word to describe a great defensive line or great defense in general where you're creating that pressure, which can lead to turnovers, which Tom Allen's defense hasn't gotten. You'd mentioned that too yesterday. They'd gotten off the tip, and Khalil Barnes was able to come down with it. but ultimately not the most productive defense when it comes to creating havoc. And I was talking about disruptive. How do you create more disruption there? And he's talking about physical practices and trying to, the technique was such a big part of it. It's just a team that you do two great things, but then they do three negative things. They're taking two steps forward, one step back. And
Hmm.
so it's been I think tackling has been better. I want to say it hasn't been as noticeable, but there's still gaps and there's still whiffs. So I think to kind of put a bow on the defensive side of things, I would say be patient with Tom Allen. There's going to be an opportunity for him to be able to, I think, go get his guys and to be able to not only in terms of maybe what changes. This isn't like a prediction or based off any information, but go get his guys also on the recruiting trail. He talked about the traits that he wants, and 6 of the 7 guys that committed to Clemson that are defenders, they were post Tom Allen. So he's seen their tape, gotten in front of them, and has put the stamp of approval on a lot of those guys. Katavion Anderson, Blake Stewart, a couple other players that I
Hmm.
think can play and have that speed that are game changing. So there's some excitement certainly for players that are coming on campus that Allen is pre-selected and been. That's someone I want on my defense.
And let me say this too. A lot of people are on there's one guy who is particularly on the Tom Allen needs to bring in his own guys on defense as far as staff. That doesn't really happen. Jim Knowles transferred from Ohio State to Penn State, didn't take his guys with him. Matt Patricia, a guy that you know really well, comes into Ohio State. He kind of inherits a staff, right? Tom Allen got to Penn State. He inherited a lot of Penn State guys who are still there. It doesn't really happen a lot across college football that a coordinator, whether it's an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator, gets to pick everybody on his staff. You might bring a guy, you might bring two. Brent Venables took a lot of defensive guys with him. He's the head coach. He gets to pick it, right? I do think that there will be some defensive staff changes. I think there will be offensive staff changes. And I think Tom Allen will have a lot of input on who those replacements are. But as far as like, bringing in his guys and just replacing everybody, it just doesn't happen. It's not that common of a thing where you see coordinators come in and they get to bring all of their guys with them. Do you think Nick Saban would have allowed that? No. He was replacing offensive coordinators there for a while, Sarkisian and Kiffin and some of those guys, pretty often. Did they get to bring all their guys with them? No, of course not, because everybody's out there looking for bigger jobs. So kind of put that to rest. I do think there will be changes this year, and I think there has to be. And I think you'll get to be a part of that process of interviewing somebody. But in the end, those kind of jobs, they're always the head coach's final decision. Sorry,
Yeah,
had
and
to put
when I
that
meant
out.
by go ahead.
No, I just needed to put that out there. Like a
Yeah,
lot of people are like, "Oh, he's got to have all of his guys." Yeah, it kind of doesn't work that way all the time.
yeah. When I meant by his guys, I meant more on the recruiting side
Oh,
where
I
he's
know.
really going
Yep.
to have a stamp on it, and he really has. And so there's some players that are coming. Even 27, there's some players that have been offered that fit more of that mold, and
Yep.
Clemson will have to battle it out after the season's ending, and we'll be all on top of that. But David, circling over to the offensive side of the ball, because I know you said you wanted to get in on this. Clemson loses Bryant Wesco for the rest of the season. Certainly been keeping him in your prayers if you haven't already. A really scary situation where he falls on his head on a punt return, and that's a completely different. Clemson needs a gadget guy. They need to stop putting out important players on special teams because this has happened twice now. Not the neck thing, but you lose Jay Haynes on a kickoff return in the AC Championship, and you've lost Brian Wesco now to the season. There's got to be somebody out there that's not a potential All-American on offense than Brian Wesco, which he was trending towards that type of season. Lose him to a scary injury, but that's something for another time. David, offensively, let's kind of rinse and repeat the same thing for defense. Who do you want to see, or who's impressed you that man,
Christopher
I'd like to
Vizina.
yeah, that's kind of the low-hanging fruit there, right?
Yeah, Christopher Vizina. I want to see more of him. I asked him a question yesterday about that play in the fourth quarter, kind of early, where Clemson's driving. They get down inside the 30, and we could see him, and we talked about it in the press box, go through his progression, something we haven't seen a lot of out of Cade, where he goes 1, 2, 3, goes back to the primary, and then comes back to his check down. And he kind of smiled and he said that was one of his favorite plays. He remembers that one. And I'm like, okay, so now you're kind of to a point where you're playing for next year. And yeah, you're playing for bowl eligibility, obviously. I get it. But you're playing for next year. I want to see more out of him. I'd love to see more out of Keith Adams Jr. just to see what he can do at running back because he's always, pretty good in there. I've talked about that. And I think, one of the more interesting things that I see on the board is the whole, well, with Bryant Wesco out, is Tristan Smith going to get more of a, of a chance, or are they going to roll Cole Turner out there and Cole's going to start playing, 45 snaps a game? I think that one's interesting. I do want to see Tristan Smith more. I want to see if he can stretch the field. I think those are, some guys that I really want to see, but I think Vizina is number one. I just want to see what he can do because everybody's got to have, everybody needs to know, can he be the guy heading into Baton Rouge last year? Let me say this. Talked to somebody who was at practice last week, and I have bragged on Chris Denson a lot. They wanted to get him more of a package against SMU Saturday. They used one of his games for a 2-yard run. They are really high on Chris Denson. He's not going to start at LSU in game one. He is athletic. He can throw it 65 yards with a flick of a wrist. He is fast. It is the passing game that still has to come along for him. The ability to throw into space, to recognize coverages, that he was a little bit raw on, and they are pleased with his progress. He's been great. He's not going to be the guy at LSU. He's going to require a little bit more time in the crock pot. You got to find out now if Christopher Vizina is going to be that guy at LSU, or are you going to the portal? And Vizina's got to figure out what is Clemson doing, and am I going into the portal to go somewhere to get a chance to play? I think it's just important. Now, I know what Dabo's going to do. As soon as Cade's back, Cade's going to be out there every play. I get it. That's your guy. You're paying him X amount of dollars, and that's what you're going to do. It's who I'd love to see, though.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that the fan base now has seen it, and let's just hypothetically say Klubnik's ready to go for Duke, and there's an erratic Thurian out, or there's some more mistakes. They've seen Vizina play, and now there's going to be more of a clamoring, which will be interesting to watch. And the thing that I took away from Vizina's play, and just sort of the compare it to Klubnik. Klubnik's a lot more of a reminds me of the backyard football, where if it's not there immediately, a little more prone to escaping the pocket. Vizina can stay in there and really deliver, and it feels more like your traditional quarterback, if that makes sense, where feet are planted, feet are bouncing, he's looking around, and he'll hit his open guy. Sure, maybe not as athletic, and he had told us yesterday that he felt like he should have used his legs a little bit more uh, in the game on Saturday. So I would like to see him more. You want to see if against a Manny Diaz defense, how does that look?
Mm-hmm.
Does he toss for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against? That'll get people excited. Maybe there's an avenue for him. I don't think this is the last time we'll see him, and I'm not saying that because we'll see him against Furman. I think that we'll see him again. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I do think that if you're that coaching staff, you've been given a little bit of a taste, an appetizer to what he potentially could be at quarterback. And you got to get a little bit more, because if you and I are sitting here talking about how he played, I can guarantee you other staffs in the country are starting to take notice, and they're seeing that quarterback and a little bit of uncertainty. Things can certainly change around here in an instant with agents and conversations. So it'll be fascinating to watch for sure.
He's got a big decision to make because he doesn't have that spring transfer window anymore. It's got to be made in January. And that's why I think the coaches, hopefully they will play him and have an idea by the time January rolls around. If he's going to be the guy or not, he'll have an idea. But you do not have the 2 transfer windows anymore, and he's got to make a decision fast.
Yeah, crucial decisions will be there. David, before we wrap this up, looking at Clemson's schedule, what excites you the rest of the way? Just looking at it, we have Duke, Florida State. That could be the Norvell firing game for all we know, where they lose to a bad Clemson team. They may be ready to dump him and leave him in a Death Valley there. They go to Friday night. They go to Louisville on Friday night for another little interesting class. Louisville get 2 Friday night games in a year. That's kind of a poor scheduling thing on their part, or on the ACC's part. You get Furman at home to kind of close it out. That's when talk about Chris Denson. Definitely going to see him, I'm sure, against the Paladins. and then South Carolina to end the year. And my bold prediction, David, I think that's going to be 5-6 versus 5-6 for a bowl game, which is
Could
going to
be.
make that week uber fascinating.
Yeah, and if I look at it now, I go Duke is kind of a toss up for me. Need to get into it a little bit more. I think Clemson beats Florida State. I do not think that Clemson will beat Louisville on the road on a Friday night with that offense, with all of the misdirection and everything that they have. And yeah, they'll beat Furman, and then South Carolina could be for bowl eligibility. They really need to beat Duke, beat FSU, you know, beat Furman, and kind of get to 6 wins before you go down there. That's what they need to do. I don't know that it's going to happen. We'll see, but it's going to be this is a fascinating few months, because I think players are going to start to drop off, preparing for the NFL. I'm not going to do this, not going to play anymore. Transfer portal is going to be active. You've got the early signing period. How are the Tigers going to be able to do? Are they going to get rid of coaches, as soon as fascinating through about mid-January for us.
Fascinating indeed, and we're excited that you guys are going to be following us the rest of the way. And we want to thank Newton Scott and Associates and Chick-fil-A for continuing to power us through one of the wackiest seasons in Clemson memory. Guys, thank you as always for tuning in. Subscribe for more. Subscribe for more of David Hood shenanigans and so much more.
No
God bless
shenanigans
y'all.
today.
No shenanigans. It was a rare day of no shenanigans. Very proud of you. And if you're proud of David, leave a comment below. Guys, thank you. Have a good one.